Okay, James, we are ready.
Super. Hello, everybody. My name is James Curry. I'm one of the librarians here at the Thomas Uslov Business Center, and I have the great pleasure to have Noel the Alacoco back again for another. I always mess up her name, so I apologize for
That's
that.
okay.
Yeah, she's also the winner recently of the Wheel of Fortune back in December, so she can tell you a little bit about that. But as a reminder, where I work here at Thomas Uslov Business Center, we're located in the Stavros Narcos Foundation Library, and basically we have a slew of resources and services. We have like 34 database computers, free Bloomberg terminals. We do programs, classes, virtual consultations, and a lot more. So if you have any questions, feel free to connect with us. I just want to say Noel, also, she's the founder of Westchester-based Operation Prom. It's a nonprofit that supplies dresses and tuxedos to students in need. And she's sort of like her company or her entity, nonprofit, is located in New York City, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Louisiana, Indiana, Georgia, and California. She's currently the entrepreneur in residence and adjunct professor at Iona College. And she was previously at the School of the College of Westchester, the School of Business there. And she's done a number of programs with the New York Public Library, like at least 5 at this point. And she's appeared on a slew of different media channels like CNN, Fox, NBC, etc. So she's definitely knows what she's talking about. So I do have a few housekeeping rules before I turn it over to Noel. The library uses Zoom, but does not own Zoom. Zoom has its own privacy policy that my colleagues will shortly put on the chat. The Q&A feature, if you do have a question or comment, just put it in there. That would be great. We'll try to answer some questions after page 2 and page 5 and at the end of the program. Today's event will be recorded and sent to everyone within 24 hours. Closed captioning is enabled for those who need it. So without further ado, thank you, Noel, again for joining us, and it's a pleasure.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me back on what we think is my 5th New York Public Library workshop, talking about the nonprofit industry. I'll go ahead and share my screen so we can get started. So this is meant to just give you a little bit of information on fundraising specifically for your nonprofit organization, whether you have one now or whether you plan on starting one and are thinking about how you can go about raising money for the cause. And lately, I feel in this industry, a lot of people have had questions due to the current economic climate and where they could go about finding grants and additional monies to help them in their nonprofit. So, this isn't meant to be the answer to everything, but to help give you some ideas and different ways that maybe you could think outside of the box on how you can raise some money. So yes, my background is that I started Operation Prom 21 years ago. The Operation Prom National Network is an organization that provides free dresses and tuxedos to students across the US. This year we have 10 states with Operation Prom chapters, and right now everybody's pretty much in full swing prom mode. We had our Brooklyn giveaway yesterday, and this weekend we have our Bronx location that's doing their dress and tuxedo giveaway. So it's a busy season, and if you're interested or if you know a student who may be interested, you can find out some information on our website, which is promnationalnetwork.org. So what are grants and how can you get some of those grants for your nonprofit? So grants, exactly simply stated, are funds to support your nonprofit organization. When you're researching grants, you want to make sure that you're looking and understanding what the differences are between restricted and unrestricted grants. So uses can be project or program specific, general operating expenses, including things like salaries and rent, but you really need to read through the qualifications and the eligibility to see if you are able to apply for those grants. And restricted means that the grant needs to be used for something that is very specific, like a program that you're running. And that may mean some of the money could be used towards salaries or no money could be used towards salaries. That's a question I get asked a lot. So restricted could mean you only can use that money to pay for the program and what you need for the program, not a salary, not your rent or general operating expenses. So that's where people really are looking for unrestricted grant funds, where if they receive a grant for $10,000 or $20,000, that money could be used towards anything at the nonprofit. It could be paying a Con Ed bill or, buying, technical supplies, whatever it is. So again, you want to make sure that you're reading through these grants to see exactly what you need to use the money for. Also, and I'll talk a little bit more about this as we move on, grant tracking and reporting is almost always required when you apply for a grant and when you get approved for that grant. So who's awarding grants? Foundations, corporations, nonprofits. I'll go into those a little bit more in detail. Where can I find grants? What category does your nonprofit fall under? Is always the important question, right? Is your nonprofit related to food insecurity, education, disaster relief, employment, the economy, environmental issues, right? You want to find companies or organizations or foundations that are related to your mission and your cause. Okay, so I did say we were going to pause, I think, after slide 2. I don't know if there's any questions just yet. We're kind of early on, but I'll take some if there are any.
No questions at this point.
Okay. So I'll go to slide 3. So you want to research those grants, right? Consider for-profit companies with those similar missions and interests. Connect with your local community groups and government agencies. I like to tell people, especially here in New York, we have so many, a variety of different community groups and organizations that nonprofits could partner with. So whether that's the local chamber of commerce, whether that is a Rotary group, or some organizations like those, a lot of times they're also willing to give money to local nonprofits. And again, it might be project related, so you always want to ask and find out exactly what they're giving money for. Research online, what kinds of grants might be available for your organization based on what you serve, the services you offer, the resources and products you supply. This could also be in-kind donations too, so keep that in mind. I'll talk about that a little bit more as well. You can use the New York Public Library, of course, as a resource, and other databases and software programs. Some do require a fee, so if you have a budget to purchase a membership, you might be able to research grants through some of these databases. Another thing I tell people is if you have a board, this could be one of the tasks that your board is, kind of taking on where, maybe you can have board members, required to, researching 3 grants a year each. And that could be helpful, right? Maybe they don't have to really read through the qualifications and all the eligibility, but to kind of, have something as a starting point where you can sort through and see what grants your organization might be eligible for. So once you find those grants, right, and then it comes time to the, am I eligible and who's writing this grant, right? So if you're just starting out and you're the CEO of your nonprofit, like I am, it might be you who's writing those grants. And do you know how, right? So of course, again, there's a lot of services out there. There's a lot of things online. The library can always help you with grant writing as well. Because there are so many resources, but you may want to actually consider hiring somebody like a grant writer. There's also nonprofit organizations that have grant writers who are really affordable. And although you're going to have to determine if you're eligible and qualified, they could at least help you in writing these grants. So what information are you going to need to write the grant? Every time I write a grant, I try to give as much information as I possibly can, right? So the mission of the organization and the services provided. What is it exactly that we do? What will the funding be used for? And what is your annual budget? So if you're writing a grant for $25,000, right? What is that money being used for? And what is your annual budget? If your annual budget is $25,000, well, is that $25,000 grant going towards running the entire organization for 1 year? Chances are you're not going to get that grant because the grantor is going to say, well, we want to invest in something that can be used towards a project or program that maybe has a longer lifeline, right? We don't want to just pay for something that's only going to let the nonprofit operate for 1 year, right? They're going to want to invest in something that has a future. So you may only want to ask for $5,000 or $10,000, even though they say that they're willing to give 25,000. They may not want to pay for salaries or rent or utilities. So again, reading through those requirements and qualifications can really help you determine what you need to ask for. And when you're giving them your annual budget, they do want to see if there are salaries, what your rents are, and any other miscellaneous expenses that you have. Grantors also want to know the impact. So if you're a newer organization, you may not have a lot of data, but you can put projected numbers in on how many people you think you may be able to serve. But any nonprofit that's been around for a couple of years, you hopefully do have data that you can provide in the grant. Demographics of the people that you serve, areas, zip codes, geography, who your board of directors are, and maybe what their background is. I've seen some grants ask where your board of directors live, where they work, how long they've been on the board, what their roles are. So again, it really does depend. And then of course, they want a copy of your taxes for the prior year. They may even ask for 2 or 3 years of prior taxes. So I'll pause here for a minute because this is kind of a lot of information, and see if there are any questions coming in.
Hey, we do have a number of questions here, actually 7.
Okay.
Who
Okay.
checks the funds that are spent as required? What consequences?
Okay, that's a great question. So again, if you're getting a grant that's $10,000, right? You get the check, you take a great photo op with that grantor, and then you're going to get towards the end of that year-long cycle, or however long that grant is for, you're going to get an email, and that email is going to say, get ready to give us your impact report. So they're expecting you to keep data, to keep receipts, and then report that to them. So, could there be consequences? Yes, there could be. If they see that you didn't use all the money, or you used the money for things that weren't part of the grant, you may have to give some of that money back.
And is there like a fee or a fine that goes
No,
with that?
I've never heard of a fee or fine, but do you have that money to give back is always the question.
Okay, which leads to the second part of this, but you basically answered it, if not spent on the right thing. So you definitely have to spend it on the right thing. So
You have to
the
spend it on the right things. Yeah.
Yep. The next question I have, how do you find grants for individual emergencies? How do you find grants to fund worthwhile GoFundMe causes? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a little trickier. GoFundMe can be used as a great tool, and sometimes it's also looked down upon, depending what that cause is. GoFundMe, if you create one of those pages, you're kind of just expected to, get people, friends, family, supporters to go on and give a couple of dollars. But if you're looking for big dollars, to help again with a program or project, then yeah, you're better off at researching companies that again maybe have a connection to what it is your organization's mission.
Yep. And we do have a great database here, the Foundation Directory, which you can only access on site. So if you do come here, the 455 Fifth Avenue on the 5th floor, we have that access to that database. It also is, I put in the chat, located at the Bronx Library Center, the Performing Arts Center, Schomburg Research Center, Black Culture, St. George Library in Staten Island, and of course, the Sportsman Building across the street, and ourselves. We do have another question. Are grants stipulated upfront as restricted or non-restricted?
Yeah, so I'll get into that a little bit more too, but it really does depend on the grant. So again, if you are looking online, if you are utilizing any of those databases and you find a grant that is related to the environment, right? And you have this great nonprofit that provides educational programs to students about, climate change and recycling, you need to read through that grant, right? That grant might be, several pages of requirements and eligibility. So you really need to see if you meet the requirements. In the grant, if it says, you know, oh, this grant is for $10,000, it will say what you can use that $10,000 for. A lot of times it will in bold say you cannot use this money for salaries, right? That's always the first one in bold. You cannot use this money towards salaries. So now you know that $10,000 that if you're awarded, you cannot use it towards salaries. That would mean that is a restricted grant. It's restricted to just the project and the program. You can't use it towards anything else.
Super. We do have a lot more questions. I'm not sure if you want to continue or do you want to?
Maybe I'll wrap up grant writing on the, well, I'll just point out here that we also, when you will be sending this PowerPoint out to everybody, so they'll get these online resources as well. And just this last slide on grant tracking and reporting, I think again is important to, you know, highlight in terms of as you get these grants, you know, what information are you collecting, right? And what you need to report. So I put a couple of bullet points here, you know, what you can use again for newer nonprofits that might not have funds for, you know, fancy software systems. Just use Excel, use a regular spreadsheet. You can, you know, put your dates on when, you know, things are due and, you know, just keep checking that calendar for whenever things like impact reports are due. Again, software programs like Fundraising and Bonterra are very popular, but they could cost an organization $1,500 to, you know, $3,000 a year. So they could be costly. Impact reporting, how long do you have to use the funds? So again, in the grants, they're going to tell you, oh, this grant is, you know, for 12 months. This grant is for 24 months. And what data does the grant require you to collect? That information will be in there. What is that data? Usually it's, you know, how many people you've served, what zip codes. They may ask things like, you know, the people that you serve, what is their, you know, annual household income? Is that information you can track? Maybe, maybe not. So, you know, again, you'd have to really, it depends on everybody's nonprofit and what they do and who they're serving. You know, can you survey your clients that you're helping?
Super. And I guess somebody's asking, do we offer grant writing courses? At this stage, not, but potentially I'll connect with Noel after this program and see if I can have somebody that she knows do a program for us. So
yeah, the only one that comes to mind is I'm here in Westchester County, but there is a nonprofit organization, and I think it's called Grant Writers of the Hudson Valley. And while they do charge a fee, it's like, you know, half the cost of what a grant writer would actually cost you, and they can help you with the writing.
okay, super. Thanks, Noel.
Sure. All right. So in terms of diversifying your funding sources, again, grants are great, but not every organization is going to get a grant or several grants, right? So what are some other ways you can look for money for your organization? Corporate donors, right? And now you might be asking yourself, great, corporate donors, you know, I could reach out to these big, you know, big for-profit companies, you know, in the area, banks and things like that. But, you know, how do you get in? How do you find the right people? And I have two answers to that. Your board, right? So when you're putting together your board, whether you have one now, whether you're thinking about it or looking to add on people, find people that are working at larger corporations that might have a larger network. Events too. Can you physically go out and network? You know, as somebody who started a nonprofit over 20 years ago, one of the first things I did was attend all the events I possibly could, you know, in my local community, whether they were political or not, either sides of the aisle. I went everywhere just so I could meet people and build my network, because I might not have needed them then, but maybe I need them now, right? So in order to find these government funds, corporate donors, partnerships, right? You have to be going to events and networking with people. So, of course, in addition to these corporate donors, right, you can go on their website, you can research, you can see if for-profit businesses have a charitable foundation that has grants that you could apply to. A lot of the banking industries do, right? So you can go to their websites and read through the eligibility and the criteria. And then there's other things. There's the government funds. And that would, again, require you to work more with your local elected officials and meeting with them and pitching what your nonprofit's mission is. Then there's events and sponsorships. The nice thing about events and sponsorships is that's unrestricted funds. If you're holding a big fundraiser or a gala and you're having a corporation be a sponsor of the gala, that money may go towards actually coordinating the gala, but whatever's left over is unrestricted funds. You can use it towards programs, salaries, or anything else that you need, paying your rent, making improvements in the business, technology. So I would definitely put a focus on what kinds of events and what kind of sponsors you could get. So I'll go on to the next slide just to expand on that a little bit more. So there are things called legislative grants, and if we're all here in New York, right, you definitely want to become familiar with who your local elected officials are, especially in the communities that you serve, right? So don't think right away, oh, I'm going right to, the governor. No, where the area that you serve, who are those elected officials immediately there? They all have community funds and budgets where they could contribute. So again, try to get connected there. In-kind donations might be things that are not money, not financial, but what does your organization really need? And maybe you can reach out to some companies, some for-profit companies that would be willing to give you something that you need. I work a lot, obviously, in the clothing fashion world in nonprofits. So we're always working with a lot of retailers and corporations, and we're not always getting money, but we're getting those in-kind donations. We're getting jewelry, we're getting shoes, we're getting cosmetics. So that's another angle too. Also, can space or storage be donated? That's kind of like a funny question living in New York, right? Space is so limited. But I have been working with a Westies storage facility, which has a great nonprofit rate and program. So of course, if you are tight on space and worried about where you're going to store things, I would definitely recommend some of the storage companies and asking them if they have nonprofit rates. Again, back to events. So sponsorships from local businesses for galas, golf outings, other fundraising events, silent online auctions, connect with corporations, when philanthropic and charitable giving departments. Again, come up with a sponsorship ask, a letter, come up with a few options. 5,000 is going to give them 10 tickets to the event. They're going to be mentioned on your social media. You're going to put their logo on your marketing materials. And that $5,000 is your nonprofits. So you can use it towards anything. That's completely unrestricted. I'll pause there again just to see if there's any questions about that.
Yeah, we actually have a lot of questions,
Okay.
believe it or not.
I'll take a sip of my coffee.
So the first one, a grant is a value title, is the first one Edwin is asking.
Is a what title?
The value title. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means.
Maybe clarify that, Edwin.
Yeah.
So we'll go to the next one. Anne is asking, I read that a cosmetics company was applying for 5 to 10 grants a week as a minority-owned business. Are there really that many grants out there?
Yeah. And if you are certified as a minority women-owned business, you can become certified here in New York State. It does open the doors to other opportunities. So that's something else you could look into.
Yeah, and just for the record books, like SCORE New York City, also it's a national entity that can help you. Also in New York State, there's a New York State Small Business Development Center. There's 22 locations. And also if you're in New York City here, New York City Department of Small Business Services, they do help you get accredited in that way too. So
that's great.
And feel free to do a virtual consultation with any of the librarians here. We'd love to hear from our audience. And the next one, how can I find and see the financials of the NPO?
Oh, of the nonprofit organization. So I use
Yeah.
a website called Candid. And if you go to the Candid website, you can search a nonprofit. And a lot of times it's available free, and you can download the PDF and you can see what they, filed on their taxes for the previous year. It'll, show you everything you need to know.
And we do have that database here too, if you need it.
Is it Candid? Do you have Candid
Yeah,
through the
it's
library?
Candid. Yep.
Oh, great.
For the foundation directory, it's Candid. Yeah. So
That's great.
are there grants that help launch a nonprofit?
Not really. And again, I think there's a lot of risk for corporations to take by saying, we're going to give you, $50,000 to start a nonprofit organization. Again, a lot of these grantors are looking for some kind of impact or data. So they want to see reporting. They want to see that you've been successful previously. What I can tell you is it may not be a bad idea to partner with another nonprofit organization and do some work together before you go off on your own and form a nonprofit and start asking for money.
Okay, super. And what would you write in a proposal to try to get unrestricted versus restricted?
Yeah, well, again, I think it depends who you're writing the proposal to. If you're just writing to, a company because you think that, their mission is aligned with yours and they might want to give you some money, right? Then you'd have to really explain that program, what are they going to hear that, tugs on their heartstrings and says, well, wow, this organization really has a great project or program and I want to invest in it. Whereas if they have already a grant, those requirements are going to be in there. They're going to list, exactly what they want to see.
Okay, and there's a tax question, which I think you can't really answer. So it's GoFundMe payments tax deductible. I would say yes, but you would really have to consult with a tax advisor, tax attorney on that question. So I don't really want to touch that topic. So I do have the IRS people coming back later this year in July. So if you want to come on board for that program, feel free to do so, and you could maybe ask that question then. And what if you are a brand new non-for-profit just getting started? Do not have a history to provide on past performance and activities, I guess, in regards to funding and stuff. So
right. You don't really maybe have the numbers or to show like what the impact is.
yeah.
I would really just make a compelling statement in your, your writing on what you plan to do. And as you're describing what the plan, what the project or the program is, really write it as if, you're talking to somebody who has no idea, right? So you're really giving them every little bit of information from what type of people you have in place to run the program, where it's going to be, how many people you think, you're going to benefit or impact, like just be really, really detailed and specific.
Okay. We do have a quick note from a person here, Lauren, so thanks for that. If you're going for a New York City Council member discretionary funds, it's only once a year and applications close in February. So start planning now. No one told us before, so we definitely didn't miss it for last month. So this person submitted it. So FYI, we do have another database. We seem to have a database for everything. Called Leadership Connect, and it does have contacts, specifically emails of folks in government and also private entities. So, so thanks for that, Lauren. And I'm not sure, do you want to continue on and get to the rest of the questions at the tail end?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Okay. And yeah, just also in terms of these grants as you're finding them, if you see some and you're researching and, you missed the deadline, put it on that calendar, right? Put it on that grant tracker for next year. So this way you can go back to it and not forget, that grant is going to be due, April 1st, right? Because that happens a lot. Or you find a grant and it is due April 1st, and that's tomorrow. And you're like, I can't, put all this information together in time. So just add it to your grant tracking calendar. So in addition to what we were talking about earlier in terms of in-kind donations and events, you know, what are some other ways you could diversify your funding sources? Those unrestricted funds, again, I know they're so challenging and important. Wealth management. So you could potentially find people, organizations that have, you know, certain types of family funds, legacy gifts, life insurance, retirement plans, where there are wealthy people who are willing to leave you a certain amount of money when they pass on, right? Again, it may be a nonprofit, a cause that's really, really close to their heart, and they're willing to leave you $250,000. And where do you find these people, right? Again, that's always the question. Where do I find these people? Again, continue with the networking, try to get out there as often as you can. If it can't be you, then make sure your board is going out and your board is networking and, you know, bringing, you know, a one-page document or something that talks about your cause and what your mission is and what you're doing. Online donations, fundraising platforms, and website integrations, of course. When people go to my website, when they go to promnationalnetwork.org, you know, pretty much as soon as you know, scroll down, you'll see right there, it says like, give the gift of prom, and people can click and it takes you right to our PayPal, and people can make a monetary donation. So again, you know, that is another unrestricted fund option. If you know, you can do any type of online fundraising, give a great story and put a button there that says donate now. So again, just a couple of different ideas. Create awareness. I have a digital press kit for Operation Prom. It's kind of like our impact report where we keep data on how many students we serve in how many locations across the US. So this might be something that you should consider doing. An info sheet with some information, again, for those of you who are new and just started a nonprofit organization. Put the programs and services that you're going to be offering and who you're going to serve, and you know, any demographic data that you can give, where these people live, age groups. Website and social media, make sure your website is current and relevant. So again, we don't want to, you know, go to a website and, you know, we're thinking about donating and all the, you know, information is outdated. Make sure you're keeping everything, you know, timely and relevant. Utilize social media, hashtags, mentions to expand your social media outreach. And, you know, there are other nonprofit dates. This just came to me, but, you know, think of things like Giving Tuesday is really a big nonprofit day in our world. And that is usually the Tuesday right after Thanksgiving. And we raise so much money on that day just by using social media. You know, we post, it's Giving Tuesday, help get your end of year tax donation, your tax deductible donations in. And we've raised thousands of dollars just doing that. And it's, you know, again, it doesn't take a lot of work. You know, it's not a lot of time. It's, you know, finding some great pictures, telling some great, you know, stories, and doing that call to action to get people to donate on Giving Tuesday. And that, I guess, goes with the last section here. Storytelling is the best marketing. Visit grantors. So if you are eligible, if you do get approved for a grant, try to meet with the grantor, go take some, you know, pictures, maybe they'll have like a big check or something like that. And, you know, share those stories, share some testimonials of the, you know, whatever your cause is, you know, take pictures and share that impact on your social media and your website. That is really, really helpful. I'll stop here for any other questions.
Okay, we have a few more. I'm a
Yeah.
social worker, Evie, and she's a social work master student looking to grow a board. What types of events would you recommend I go to?
Oh, that's great. Well, I guess again, it would depend on what kind of nonprofit you are going to form. So again, if it's medical, if it's, education, if it's mental health, right? Look at other organizations, because even if it's a competing nonprofit, let's say, you're going to go to their upcoming fundraiser, their upcoming volunteer opportunity, and you're going to meet people, and the people in that room are going to be the people that are interested in that cause and that mission, right? And that's like the best way to find people. We have, again, I'll bring up like Chamber of Commerce. We have over here in Westchester, the Business Council of Westchester. We have so many people from all different businesses, from our local hospitals to PepsiCo. I mean, you can meet so many people. And again, I think it's just important to get out there and meet with people.
Absolutely. Some grants will only consider a nonprofit if there's a relationship. What is your strategy in making relationships with organizations that you do not have a connection with?
Yes, you're 100% right. And now I sound like a broken record saying go to those events and find them, but it really is true. I've been working with a lot of banks lately, and I'm finding that any, bank representative, whether they are in a branch or in a regional office, they're looking for customers too. They're looking for banking customers. So they're at events, whether they're real estate events or insurance events. You might find these people in, something that's not so close to your mission, but they're there, they're out there.
I think the thing is that if you don't ask, you don't receive in this world.
Yeah. And LinkedIn, search.
LinkedIn. Yep, absolutely.
Search on LinkedIn. I mean, there have been people that, I just type in the company name and people will pop up, and I might have a second or third connection to them. So, you ask for that introduction.
Yep. And with LinkedIn, Noel and I, that's how we connected. So
that's true.
five programs later. So
Yes.
so it is successful.
It is.
Like a trust or a check, simply a direct deposit. That is my doubt. I'm not sure exactly. That was the previous question from Edwin. Yeah. Let's see here.
Like
The
a
grant is a value title.
like a
That's where I
trust.
mentioned a trust. Yeah. I guess we'll go to the next question. What apps do you use to keep your applications organized, and what apps do you use in general for productivity?
Yeah, I use SharePoint, which is Microsoft. It's really nothing, too fancy. I have a lot of friends in the nonprofit industry, CEOs and executive directors that have funding for some, really nice software programs. There's so many out there from, I think I said Bonterra before. They can really help you, stay organized. It's just, if you have the funding for it.
And how much does Giving Tuesday cost to use? That's
Nothing.
just nothing, yeah.
Nothing. It's totally free, and actually on their website, I don't know if they have it up yet for 2025, but it's, all stuff that you can download for free.
Okay. And do you have any recommendations for volunteer student groups who want to find grants or partnerships for long-term and ongoing projects for students to work with, e.g. supporting social work media efforts for a term?
Interesting. So it's students. Could you read the first part again? Students looking for?
Volunteer student groups who want to find grants or partnerships for long-term and ongoing projects for students to work with, supporting their social media efforts.
Right. I don't know of any grants per se. I mean, I don't know if I'm answering the question right. If it's a student volunteer group at a university or one of the local colleges, I would assume that maybe somebody at the college could help with that. Otherwise, the only other thing that comes to mind is there's a nonprofit called Volunteer New York. I think it's volunteerny.org, and there's ways you could find volunteers. There's a lot of opportunities on there, not for grants, but if you're looking to find people that are willing to help.
Okay, super. Now we do also have a database that has information on podcasts, media and stuff. It's called SRDS, and it's only accessible here. The beauty with this particular database is you can come into the library here at the Business Center. We're located on the corner of East 40th and 5th Avenue, and you can access this database free of charge, and you can connect with people that are in the media, in podcasts, etc. So it's a really, really cool database. It's maybe a way to sort of connect with people that you wouldn't normally connect with. So, and I'll send you a link in a second. And we do have one more question here. Let's see, or maybe several more.
Okay.
I guess I'm asking, how can these student groups get funding to support their efforts?
Sometimes individual fundraising is really the only option. So can the students do any type of fundraising themselves, whether that's with their friends or family, going into the local communities to talk about what they're doing? I think it's going to be challenging to find a grant for that. But again, I don't know if I know entirely like the mission and the cause. My email is on the last slide. So if you want to email me at delacogroup@gmail.com, maybe I can try to guide you a little bit better.
Okay, super. Okay, so no further questions at this point.
No other questions. Okay. All right. Well, that's okay. I did also just want to go back to one of the slides here. I think it was just diversifying these funding sources. Just also in terms of, trying to find money, I gather not everybody's, going to be able to spend a lot of time researching and reading through these grants to see if they're eligible. Again, I said earlier, have your board members try to look that up. Maybe it is volunteers. Maybe your volunteers are going to start doing some, research, but stick to local. If you're a new nonprofit, see what businesses are in the area. And this is where events really can help you with those unrestricted dollars. It doesn't have to be a big black tie, fancy gala. This could be a luncheon. This could be a networking opportunity. There doesn't need to be a 5-course, meal being served. I've gone to a lot of events for nonprofits where, they're $50 to attend, and it's a networking opportunity. Award ceremonies are another way to bring people in and raise some money. Maybe you're honoring a really exceptional volunteer. And when you do things like that, when you honor people, usually they bring their friends and their family with them, right? So if you, honor somebody who's been exceptional for your organization, and, they know they're getting an award on May 1st, and they're going to invite, they're going to fill up a whole table, maybe 2, right? And that's not just more money, but it's also possibly more relationships, right? Anytime people bring friends, family members, it could be somebody else who's interested in your cause and your mission. So again, just keep thinking, outside of the box. I also said earlier, partnering with another nonprofit. I partner with so many other nonprofit organizations all the time. And that's because, it's good to have connections with others, and we're in a few different states across the US. So for us to reach more students, we have to partner with other organizations. So we partner with like the local YMCAs, and having those partnerships also just expand your reach, and it makes your organization, you're creating awareness that way. Your logo on a partnered event, people are like, oh, what is Operation Prom, right? And then they research and they find a little bit more, about you and want to help too. So those partnered events, again, you might not get a return right away, but down the line, you might get some interest. I think I'll stop there. Is there any other questions?
Cosmo is, hang on a second. Cosmo, who I actually met the other day, so thank you. A big shout out to Cosmo there. This is an amazing presentation, Noel. Thank you so much. Endless blessings to you.
Thank you.
And I shouldn't read this, but he said, thank you, James, for what you provide the NYPL.
Yes.
It was delightful to meet you. So it's a pleasure to meet you too. You're a kind and gentleman. So
Oh,
thank you so much, mate. And Noel, Maggie is saying, thank you, James, Noel, and NYPL. Very informative webinar. So thanks, Maggie. And Cosmo, phenomenal, dynamic duo here this Monday afternoon. So absolutely.
Well,
thank you
you
so much, guys. So now, as a reminder, a lot of folks really wonder what we do here, and we do a lot. We do wonderful classes or programs like today. We do classes on different databases. Some of the ones that I did mention, we actually don't have programs yet on those databases, but you can always do a virtual consultation with us no matter where you live. If it's Timbuktu and you have like an internet connection, and you can do it from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday to Friday, we definitely welcome you to come on board and ask a question. It will be a virtual event. Paula says, great session. Thank you both. And do you have anything else to add, Noel?
No, thank you all so much for joining us here today. I hope it was informative. And again, if you're just starting out, keep trekking along. Takes time, but you'll get there. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Definitely. And as a reminder, we'll have Noel back again in 2026. I'm sort of fully booked unless I have a cancellation.
Wow, that's great.
But it's always a pleasure having you here. Also, Anthony and Anna in the background that provide all the support that I need. So, and Maddie that's listening in. So I appreciate everybody who tuned in, and for the people that are watching on replay, definitely feel free to, organize a consultation with us. If you feel free, reach out to Noel for more information on nonprofits. She's the nonprofit queen, as far as I'm concerned. So, and to support her organization, she's always willing to receive some funds, I guess. So, but anyway, that's a plug. And she was the winner of the Wheel of Fortune. You want to talk about that in the next couple of seconds?
Oh, yeah. I mean, hey, listen, a great way to get some money for your nonprofit is go on a game show and try to win.
Yeah, and she won. So
I won. Yeah.
She was incredible. Last December, I watched it, and it was pretty cool. So I never watched that show, and it's incredible to watch it. And she's a big fan of Disney World. So that's another story for a different day. But again, Noel, it's a pleasure, and thank you guys for tuning in today.
Thank you.
Okay, cheerio. Bye.
Bye-bye.